Welcome to the Explainer. It's pretty amazing how a single line of scripture can sometimes unlock a whole universe of meaning. Today, we're doing just that. We're going to dive deep into one powerful verse from the Qur'an and unpack a scholarly analysis that really gets into the nature of prophecy, divine peace, and what it even means to be close to God. Right here, this is our starting point. This is the declaration the Qur'an attributes to the infant Jesus or ʿIsa. Now, this statement of divine peace, this salam, it is so much more than just a greeting. The analysis we're digging into uses this verse as a key to unlock a much bigger conversation about what a prophet's journey is all about and their relationship with the divine. So to really follow the author's argument, here's our roadmap. We're going to start with this whole concept of prophetic peace. Then we'll look at the examples of Abraham and Ishmael, tackle the really interesting enigma of the prophet Idris, and then we'll tie it all together with this idea of a spiritual ascent. All right, let's jump right in. Okay, first things first. What exactly is this peace or salam that Jesus is talking about? The analysis we're following makes a really strong case that this is something way more profound than just, not having any conflict or trouble in your life. Think of this salam as a divine gift. It's like a spiritual shield, a state of complete integrity and security that God grants to his prophets at the absolute most critical moments of their existence: birth, death, and resurrection. It's a sign of their special status and a kind of protection from ever going astray. Now, to get a better handle on this, the analysis brings in some other huge figures. We're going to look at how this idea of peace, along with other essential virtues, really shows up in the lives of Abraham and his son Ishmael. So when you look at Abraham, the analysis points out how this search for divine peace wasn't just for himself. It extended outwards. When he prayed for his father, it wasn't just about family. It was a prophetic plea, a deep desire for another person's soul to find that divine mercy and truth. So right away, peace is tied to compassion for others. And then there's Ishmael, who the text holds up as like a pillar of prophetic character. You can see these qualities here. He was true to his promise, he guided his community, and he reached this state of being pleasing to his Lord. Now, the big takeaway here is that these aren't just personality traits. The source is presenting them as the very benchmarks of the prophetic virtue we're talking about. And this is where the specific words become super important. The source makes a clear distinction between a prophet, a nabi, and a messenger, a rasul. And get this, by describing Ishmael as both, the Qur'an is elevating his status in a major way. It's saying he didn't just uphold the existing law, he was a really significant messenger in his own right. And this idea of an elevated status, well, that's the perfect setup for our next point. Okay, now the argument takes a really fascinating turn. We're shifting to another prophet, Idris. And this is where we hit a phrase that theologians have been talking about for centuries, this idea of being raised to a makan aliyah, which translates to a high station or a lofty place. The text really zooms in on that last part, and we raised him to a high station. This little phrase has sparked a huge debate. Was this a physical journey, or was it something else entirely? What does a high station actually mean? So, on one hand, you have the literal interpretation. This view says it was a physical event. Idris was literally picked up from the earth and taken to a specific spot in the heavens. His elevation was basically a form of travel, an ascension to a physical place. But then there's this really compelling alternative. The second interpretation sees this high station not as a place at all, but as a spiritual state. It's talking about an exalted rank of honor, a deep purity, and a kind of nearness to God that's about status and virtue, not location. And this right here, this is the absolute core of the argument in our source text. It doesn't just lay out these two ideas, it puts them head to head to make a case for a much deeper, more theological understanding of what true elevation is all about. This slide really lays out what's at stake with each view. The author argues that if you tie God's presence to a physical location, you're actually limiting the whole concept of the divine. But the spiritual interpretation, that fits perfectly with the idea that God is transcendent, beyond physical space. And if that's true, then being close to God can't be measured in miles, can it? And that is the central thesis in a nutshell. The ultimate honor, the absolute highest station a person can ever reach, isn't about where you are in the universe, it's about your spiritual rank, your virtue, the quality of your relationship with the divine. It is an internal state, not an external address.
So, if this high station is a state of spiritual nearness, then the next logical question is, how do you get there? Well, the text pulls together all the lessons from the prophets we've just talked about to give us a pretty clear picture.
You see, it's not just one thing, it's a culmination of character. It's about achieving that divine peace of Jesus, having the compassionate outreach of Abraham, the rock-solid integrity of Ishmael, and the truthfulness of Idris. It's a complete, holistic path of virtue, devotion, and righteousness. So, the crucial point, the big idea, is this. The source uses the stories of these prophets to argue that the ultimate journey, it's an internal one. The prophetic path doesn't end in a physical trip to the stars. It culminates in achieving a spiritual rank, a closeness to God that goes way beyond our physical world and its limitation. And that leaves us with a pretty profound thought to chew on. If the ultimate goal isn't a destination we have to travel to, but a state of being we have to cultivate inside ourselves, well, that changes the whole purpose of a spiritual life, doesn't it? It's not about getting somewhere else, it's about becoming someone else. Thanks for joining us for this explainer.